The opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of our sponsors and are only those of the individual commentators. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good evening and welcome to the Raben Report. I'm your host, Elliot Raben, and with me is my expert panel, as always, Christina and Anna. How are you guys?
Good. How are you, Elliot?
I am good. We're all good now. Got the show up and running. How are you, Anna?
Well, a little bit stressed out because of the TTC delays, but here I am. I made it.
Well, you know, nobody's more glad that you made it than I am. But on top of that, we've also got special guest Tonya Wiseman with us. Tonya, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Elliot?
I'm good. Come up to the mic so we can hear you. But yeah, I'm good. Thanks for being here. We're so excited to have you back. And you know, let's have a good show as always. So coming up in 15 minutes, we'll be talking about our main topic, which is church and state. But first, let's take a look at our top stories, starting with a U.S. election check-in. So there is a lot going on down south. It's, you know, we've got between a Trump rally that happened on Saturday, a recount in Georgia, and Trump still having yet to concede. What do you guys think about what's going on down south?
I don't think anybody's surprised that, you know, Trump wasn't happy with the results. I think we could have predicted that happening anyways. So it's kind of going as expected, I'd say.
Anna?
Well, like, honestly, the States, it has been a drama during the last weeks. I haven't been following as in the past because now it's like going back and forth. Like at this point, it's like they have counted votes. Like there's already a victory for Biden. So what is the next thing to do? Like you have to assume the situation and just go with that. I mean, if there are legal resources that can be used, of course, go for it. But, you know, you need to like also assume certain circumstances at this point.
And Tonya?
Well, honestly, I expect the whole legal investigation about voter fraud to be going on probably for another month. I don't think it'll have any success per se, but I think Trump is very resilient and he's not going to give up. So we should expect that to be going on for quite some time.
It's... you know, all I can say really is thank God we're up here. But, you know, we're going to have to wait and see. Do you think that...
Yeah, actually, like, for example, the Trump rally, what happened during the weekend? Like, there were certain demonstrations taking place, and suddenly Antifa arrived to the place, and a mess started, like harassment to Trump supporters. Yeah. Like, that can say a lot about the political environment in the U.S. and how intolerance can come from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think about that, Christina, about the violence going on in the States?
Obviously, it is not good. And like Anna said, I agree. I think it speaks a lot to the political climate there and how divisive it is. This kind of violence isn't acceptable from either side, from the right or the left. So, I mean, it's sad to see, but you're right. Thank God we live here.
I also haven't seen Biden condemn Antifa yet. But
exactly. Yeah. Like, if I was in his situation, of course I'm not, thanks God. But, you know, like, I would basically be like, if you want to unify the country, that is what he said when he won, to say somehow, you need to start by condemning this act of violence, you know, either come from the right wing or the left wing, because that's what could bring this country together.
Yeah, well, I mean, you look back at his victory speech, and he said that we need to unite the country. Do you think that will actually unite them?
For sure not. Also because a lot of like mainstream media didn't report these attacks, you know, like they were like very, I would say that they didn't want to show that the left can be also violent. So that's why you didn't see those news in many mainstream outlets. Like actually Ivanka Trump tweeted that, like, wow, it's incredible how the mainstream media is not showing this.
Yeah, I think the left feels, or a lot of the left feels, that they're justified their violence right now, like it's allowed. So, which it isn't. But.
Yeah, I mean, it's again. Let's then move on to, we're going to stay down south in the United States, but we're going to move to some good news, which is the fact that Kim Ng makes MLB history. She is the first general manager of a Major League Baseball team, the Miami Marlins, and not only that, first Asian female GM. And she says, this is a quote from her, "This challenge is one I don't take lightly. When I got into this business, it seemed unlikely a woman would lead a major league team, but I am dogged in the pursuit of my goals. My goal is now to bring championship baseball to Miami. I am both humbled and eager to continue building the winning culture our fans expect and deserve." So, considering all three of you are women, how do you feel about this being the first time a woman is the GM of a Major League Baseball team?
I think it sucks that it took this long, but I also think it's great. It's always nice to see this kind of history being made. And I don't, I'm not somebody who follows baseball. Don't care for it.
Preaching to the choir.
Don't care for it at all, but it is nice to see. So props to her.
Tonya?
I think it's great. It shows some women leadership, especially in sports. We don't see that often. So politics, I think, maybe is branching into that area, which is good. So, yeah.
And Anna?
Well, I think it's good news again, but like Christina said, I'm not into baseball as much. I'm more into soccer, so...
Geez, I wonder why that is.
Oh, South America has something to do with it.
Well, again, I think there's nothing negative to be said about this. I mean, last week, Anna, you said something that you don't like people being hired on the race
base of
or
gender or race.
Base,
yeah, I actually agree with that. Like,
do you think that she was hired based on her gender or her race, or do you think she's qualified?
I cannot tell because I haven't seen her curriculum and I don't know anything about this person. But like if she is good at it, go for it. And I really hope it wasn't a selection based on gender or something. Like, regardless, even if it was a man, I would still be like, okay, good for him, Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, she does have 30 plus years in baseball. She's worked with numerous teams. She started out as an intern, and now she's leading Major League Baseball teams. So that's a piece of good news.
That's accomplishment.
I think the merit is there then.
Yeah. And just like life, hills and valleys. So we started with some bad news in the States. Now we hit some good news. Now let's go back to some bad news, which is an update on the coronavirus. Guys, we have a birthday. Do you know whose birthday it is?
Oh my God.
It's coronavirus's birthday. Today was the first case reported in China.
Oh my God. Happy birthday, COVID.
We can make a COVID cake.
And I hope for many more years.
Oh, no.
No.
I'm joking.
Yeah, because I bring it up mainly because, Anna, last week you had a birthday in your family, Zahavi had a birthday in his family, and now we have a birthday that everybody can celebrate. What do you think? How do you feel about this questionable milestone?
You know what else I was just thinking? I don't think any of us knew that COVID existed this time last year, which is
very true.
Terrifying and upsetting. And I'm so mad that things happened the way that they did, because we could have prevented it from going on for this long and for getting this bad.
I think it's embarrassing. It's been a year.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we did, again, we're talking about milestones. We reached another record high cases in Ontario, 1,500. And Anna?
Well, I think at this point this is going to last for I don't know how long. People were criticizing the Prime Minister because he said something about some kind of reset regarding COVID. And I was like, is this something that should be celebrated? Like, is this a new model of life? Like, how can you take it as something good?
And we might be in for another lockdown, which is something people are not looking forward to. But on the horizon, we do have Moderna, which has a 95%, or was it 90%?
I think it was 94 point something.
Yeah,
of effectiveness.
Of effectiveness that's coming out. And the question is, would you guys take a coronavirus vaccine?
Yes.
Absolutely not. Well, not anytime soon.
I would. I trust vaccines. I mean, I might get some criticism for that, but I do trust.
But would you take it right away, or would you say, you know what, maybe I'll be in the second, third round?
That's a good question. I don't know if I can answer that, but I think that it's good. The news about the vaccine is good, and we've seen vaccines cure diseases in the past, right? Mm-hmm. So many viruses and pandemics have been cured by vaccines. And no longer exist because we have vaccines for them. So I'm hopeful.
Anna?
I'm a pro-vaccine person as well, but I will wait for other people to take it first.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't take the Russian vaccine.
Well, you know what's funny? I was just about to mention that, and you mentioned Russia. Putin's daughter took the vaccine, and apparently it was all good. So now Putin is okay to take it. So he used his daughter as...
Exactly. That's my face, Christina.
Oh my God. That is that's something Trump would do too, though.
Russia, that. There's a lot going on in Russia. What do you think about that? Would you take the vaccine, Tonya?
Well, I just want to make clear I'm not anti-vax by any means, but as far as the coronavirus vaccine goes, I don't think I personally want to take it anytime soon because I'm not at high risk category and I haven't personally taken a flu shot. I know this is maybe not in connection to the coronavirus vaccine, but I haven't taken a flu shot in a really long time and I haven't been sick personally since I took those flu shot vaccines. So that's just my personal bias. I'm just going to try to remain healthy and, wear the mask, clean my hands, stay away from the elderly, and that's that.
Yeah. Again, when do you guys think this is going to be over, though?
It depends. If the vaccine is out within the next couple of months, I'd say a year, maybe, it would go on for and then kind of die down, but I don't know.
I hope before the end of my lifetime, at least.
Yeah, you and me both. But now let's move on to our main topic, which is church and state. The concept of separation between church and state is the belief that that the religious and political powers in society are clearly distinct though both claim the people's loyalty. Over the past 4 years, the U.S. had a boost in religious support due to the Trump administration's public support of religious freedom. Following Biden's projected win, his first action the following day was to attend church. Here at home in Canada, social and religious conservatives have seen themselves more represented with politicians like Dr. Leslyn Lewis making waves in the Conservative Party and the media. On the other side of the globe, religious extremism has spiked with multiple religiously motivated terrorist attacks in Europe and constant bombardment, constant issues going on there. But again, it doesn't start and stop there. This topic is not new, but it seems more relevant than ever. In season 3, we had an episode on religious freedom, but on tonight's show, we discuss the connection and importance, or lack thereof, between religion and government. Is Canada truly secular? Should it be? Let's find out. As a reminder, we are live on Facebook, so make sure to comment on our feed to have your thoughts read live on air. We're going to start with religion today. So I'm curious, are you guys religious people? Do you follow religion even a little bit, a lot? Christina?
Not in the slightest. I do identify as an atheist, but that doesn't mean that I can't have my mind changed in the future. That's just the conclusion that I have come to for a long time now, and that's what I'm happy being. And I think the last time, my family, I have religious family members, and I think the last time I went to church would have been like at least a decade ago. So it's not something that's part of my life. I had a grandmother pass away, and that was the one time I was kind of finding God, and I grew out of that. So not religious.
Anna?
I am religious. I come from a religious family. I am Roman Catholic, and like many other Hispanics as well, is the most popular religion over there, and that's what I follow.
And Tonya?
I personally am not religious. I identify as agnostic. I have for a while now, and I think I'm pretty much going to for the rest of my life. But my mom is an Italian immigrant, and she was my mom is an Italian immigrant. I don't know if I got that on. And I was baptized in under a Catholic church, so that is in my family on my mom's side. But I don't personally align with all of those values, and I haven't been to church in years. So.
But you're also half Jewish.
I am. I recently found out a few years ago that I'm half Ashkenazi Jew. So that has sparked my interest in Judaism. I have been looking into it a little bit out of curiosity, but it's not. I don't ascribe to a firm religion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I would say I'm not very religious. I try to celebrate the high holidays, and it's more of a cultural connection that I would say I have to Judaism as opposed to religious.
Mm-hmm.
But does the state's acceptance or tolerance of religion in the country affect your relationship with religion, with God? Anna?
Sorry, can you make that question again?
Like the way that the country, the state treats religion, does it affect your personal connection to your religion?
Well, I've been lucky enough. I would say, lucky that I was born into a Catholic majority country, and Canada is a country with a lot of religions coexisting, but it's still a country with a lot of Christians. So, for me, it has been a very comfortable way. I find that Canada, of course, different of Venezuela, is more like, I would say, atheist or non-believer in certain aspects, but still is like very easy to follow, being a Catholic in Canada.
Yeah. Christina?
Well, nothing. It doesn't affect me in any way. There's nothing that the government is stopping me from believing or actually not believing in. So, I haven't personally faced any issues.
And Tonya?
I think recently I've just been seeing or experiencing that more people I know aren't really religious. So the state, nothing seems to have an effect on me. If anything, it sort of supports my idea that I don't know there's a God and I'm not religious, and more people seem to be on that side, my generation, so it doesn't affect me.
Well, you mentioned a lot of your friends not being religious. That brings us to millennials and Gen Z. A January 2020 Angus Reid poll found that 34% of Canadians either definitely do not believe in, 14% don't think that, or 20% God or a higher power. For Canadians aged 13 to 34 in this poll, non-believers and doubters are much higher still at 46%. So why do you think that is? Why do you think that our generation, millennials, Gen Z, are less likely to follow religion, to subscribe to God? Or
I think there's a lot of different reasons. I was going to say that I personally, actually, many of my friends are believe in God or come from religious families and maybe do practice, celebrate some holidays. So I'm not totally surprised. I think one of the reasons would definitely be just what we know today. I think that, every year we're learning new things about the world. And I think that our generation, younger people, are more science-based in their thinking. That would probably be like one of the reasons I can personally think of why we maybe aren't as religious as older generations.
Anna?
I think it is also a matter of the education. Like, for example, in the case of universities, you get a lot of left-wing professors, and many of them are non-believers. Why? Because Marxism has the core belief that what is that they say? Oh, that religions are the opium of the people. Something like that is what they say. So the point is that also society has become more easy to navigate through, and I have the perspective that as easier as the society goes and as easier life becomes, the less you need the presence of God. So that's why you see that many countries that are very vulnerable are countries that actually have more faith and more people that believe, because humans are very vulnerable creatures. So when they think that things are getting out of their hands and control, they need to have like reinforcement that there is something over there. So it's a psychological concept in that sense.
And that's what you've gathered based on being in Canada versus Venezuela?
Yes, actually. And something funny about my country is that a lot of people, when seeing, and I saw this in my own parents, my mom and dad, they were not the kind of people, especially my mom. She was super lazy to go to church on Sundays. Like, you go with your dad. I won't go. I will stay at home. Now she like prays the rosary every day, and she's just like, she found in her faith a way of going through all the crisis and disaster that is going on in the country.
Interesting. Tonya, how do you feel about why young people are no longer religious or not as religious?
Well, I definitely, after graduating from Ryerson, I don't want to shame the school at all, but in the political science department, most of the professors are left-wing, Marxists. They come under that umbrella. They teach under that umbrella, and they do portray religion, all religions, even Christianity, to be mostly negative and not really have any fundamental, like, good intrinsic value to it. So I think that's a large reason why a lot of people my age in their 20s are deterring away from that idea of religion. And also, I do see the media really portraying religious extremism on all sort of religion, like terrorism, whatever it is, Muslim, Christians, anyone. And that has a large effect because it's teaching young people that religion is scary and it's bad people, it's not good people. So
now, you talk about how it's interpreted in the media and all that, which brings us to state control, which is the essence of this discussion. Should there be complete, partial, or no separation between church and state? And for those of you watching, by church we mean religion as a whole. That's just how it's referred to. What do you guys think? We're going to start with Christina.
Full separation.
Full separation?
I think we'll get into it a bit more into the show. I can see where there's a couple exceptions, maybe with some stat holidays.
Yeah, we're going to get to that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. But besides that, I think there should be full separation.
Tonya?
Full separation also. I'm with
full
that.
Separation?
Yeah.
And Anna?
I also support separation, secularism.
Full separation?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, so not much disagreement there, but just wait, because this show's going to get spicy. Are a country's values, though, based on religion? So even though you all are for separating the actual practice of religion from government and law, isn't law based on religion? Like,
absolutely. It comes from custom. Yeah. That's one of the sources of the law, and custom religion is part of that.
Because there's always the concept we live with Judeo-Christian values in this country, right? So
I think the British Protestants were the first large inhabitants here, and they brought along Christian Eurocentric values, and then sort of that's how the Catholic school system brought to be an idea, publicly funded.
And also when it comes to legislation in general, most of the West is also, it has an essential root in Greek and Roman law. that's also a part of it.
So then how do you separate it from the state? If it's all based on religion, how do you make that distinction? Where and this is another part of the question, where do you draw the line between democracy and theocracy?
I think the way you draw the line is when you don't let religious institutions like the church in general, like for example, to influence in the state. That's where you draw the line. For example, in the case of Russia, they are not formally a theocracy, but for no one is a secret that the Orthodox Church has a lot of influence in the government. So that's one of the things.
Yep, that's true. The same with other religions. They're not so much accepted. I mean, there was the whole, in the 80s or the 90s, Jews fled Russia because they were not accepted, and they were allowed to leave, and so they did that. Tonya?
Sorry, are we on number 5?
Where do you draw the line?
Well, I take a very libertarian stance. I don't think that. Ideally, I would like limited government intervention when it comes to education. I just think students, parents, families should have that sort of template and control that area, especially if they want to religiously educate their children. So that brings us now to something that you mentioned, Christina, statutory holidays. So statutory holidays are based on. A lot of them are based on religion. So we have Christmas, we have Easter, we have Good Friday. Do you support having holidays based on these Christian holidays, on these Christian traditions?
Well, one thing I will say is that despite the fact that I do not follow or practice any religion, I do celebrate Christmas. My family celebrates Christmas. And I know it may be offensive to some, but it's not about the story of Christmas for us. What it is about family and being together, eating, sharing our love for each other, and kind of just, it's just a moment to be with your family. And that for my family, at least, all it is about is being together and, sharing our love and thankfulness with each other. So with that being said, and I remember going to school with friends who were not Christian, and they were celebrating Christmas. We would exchange Christmas gifts. It was people from other religions celebrating Christmas, and I think that's just a Canadian value. It's part of our history. It's part of the way that our society works. And one thing I will say is that. I think we need some of these, because if you were to get rid of the religious stat holidays that we have, you're left with 2.
Right, but if you want complete separation between church and state, how do you justify having those holidays?
Well, I don't know. I'm not going to say that it's necessary. I don't know how I would justify it.
The thing is that it is I don't see it as a way of the state. I see it as a way of a cultural aspect. In order to just dismantle of that system, you will basically need to dismantle nations are created from the beginning.
Right. And I just think we need to have something in place where there's mandatory time off for employees and for working people. We need to allow people to spend time with their families besides Family Day. That's the one holiday we have in Ontario, and I think we need to be giving people mandatory time off because people need breaks, people need to see their family. So that doesn't mean that we can't, shift things around, but I see why we have these holidays, and I think that they mean a lot more than religion to some people.
Tonya, you actually, when we spoke before the show, you disagreed with having Christian holidays as public holidays. Why?
I just don't like the idea of having it public, only Christian as public. That's why. But as Christina said, I celebrate Christmas, and I know a lot of non-Catholic or Christian people celebrate Christmas. It's just when it's projected onto when government controls it and says this is the holiday and it's associated with only this religion, then that's problematic, and it doesn't represent all Canadians.
Another thing I was going to say is I think that we should also maybe consider also having the option for people who observe other holidays to be able to take that time off from work without being penalized.
Is that the case right now? Are people being penalized when they take off work?
I'm not 100% sure. I don't. I don't.
That depends on the workplace, really. Like some people, if they talk to their manager, they can take time off. Like I know, for example, Jewish coworkers, like when it's a holiday, sometimes they speak up and they're like, okay, yeah, go early today.
I just will. I don't think every workplace has that. I think, if you say that I'm taking a day off for Eid, they might say, okay, that's a vacation day. I can't speak to obviously every employer, but I do think that they should be given the option to take that time off and not have that come out of their vacation days or sick days or personal time off. It should be treated the same way that other stat holidays are.
Well, it's interesting you mention that because, for example, religious exemptions, you were talking about workplace. Let's talk about university, not public schools yet, university. In Ryerson, York, for example, you have to get a religious exemption notice in order to observe your religion. But for the Christian holidays, you don't have to do that because it's a public holiday. Do you think that that's fair, considering that this is a Christian country?
I think that's normal, actually. And the reason why I think that's normal is because regardless, like, Canada was a country like that was founded by basically Christian people. And if you go to Latin America, you're going to experience the same. If you go to Thailand, you're going to get what? Guess what? They don't care about Christianity and they don't care about Christmas. So you are going to adjust to Buddhist holidays. And that's the way with every country, pretty much.
That's interesting you bring that up, Tonya. Israel is a Jewish country, but it's not an ethno-state. That we have to clarify before we get the haters. But for example, their weekends are Friday and Saturday. Public holidays are Jewish holidays, right? So do you think that should be eliminated too?
No, because I personally...
Ooh.
Now I'm going to get a lot. I think that if we're really going to go there, Jews... Israel belongs to Jews. So, and
do you think so? Let's talk about then not only Israel, but let's talk about some Muslim countries that are governed by Sharia law, or Islam is the defining factor. Their holidays, I would assume, public holidays are based on Islamic holidays. Do you support that?
Yes, I was actually going to get into that because I'm more so a nationalist, which I think that
So get into that.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's this whole push for globalism, basically, and I think that if a country's secular, depending the degree, globalism almost can't work if countries are nationalist, even though they should be. That makes sense, in my opinion. I'm not totally against globalism, but like it's
but I kind of didn't understand as well very well your position.
I was just gonna kind of add on to what Tonya was saying. What I think she's kind of getting at is that there's, I don't want to say there's exceptions for other countries or what. For me, it's like my main concern is where I live, and I think that's the case for most people. You're most concerned about yourself and your immediate surroundings.
Like worry about that. I'm saying before,
but right, and so it's not
other countries.
Yeah, and it's not to say that I think that other countries should always live that way. I am a firm believer in keeping the two separate, but I will say if you go to countries where they're dominated by one religion, or they only follow one religion, like there's many countries where there's pretty much only one religion. Most South American countries, most people are Catholic, and it's the majority, and I can see why having those holidays in place, because most people are like, if 98% of the population is going to be taking them.
Well, further to that point, the majority of people in Canada would celebrate Christmas. So again, Tonya,
right? But I think the reason that there's so many people that do celebrate Christmas is because it's just kind of part of Canadian culture in a way. Because I can say that there's so many people
because it's based
celebrating
off of Christian.
Yeah, but there's so many people celebrating Christmas not for the religious aspect of it.
But that
But
comes,
it comes from a root. Like
Yeah.
then
It
in
comes from
Latin
a root,
America, in Latin America is the same. Like a lot
Yeah.
of people is Catholic, a lot of people celebrate Christmas. I also have friends who are atheists living in Latin American countries, and they still celebrate Christmas because it comes from the same culture.
and that's exactly right, because no matter that it's a cultural part of Canadian Canadiana, it still comes from the religious aspect. So
Right. I think when you look at Canada, though, and how multicultural we are, there is absolutely no denying that we are one of the most multicultural places on this earth. We have one of everyone.
is that a good thing?
I think so. I don't think that there is anything wrong with it. As long as we're all following the law. And
So if we are so multicultural, why shouldn't we celebrate the other holidays as public holidays?
Yeah.
because, well, that's a good question, but I mean,
That's what I'm here for.
I know. And like I was saying before, I don't think there's people who are Christian, or maybe just someone like me who's atheist, who's going to go out and celebrate Eid. That's not part of my tradition. That's not part of something that my family does. So that doesn't mean that shouldn't be time given to people to take off, but it just doesn't mean that I need to then, celebrate it. And
Marshall says we'd have every day off if that were the case.
I will agree with that.
Wouldn't that be a good thing, though, if we just had holidays?
I would love that.
So that, we're going to leave it there for now, just because, actually, you know what? We're not. Tonya,
Oh.
keep going on why you think that we shouldn't have on Christian holidays as public
It's
holidays.
not that I shouldn't think we should have Christian holidays. Again, I said
Public holidays.
I'm very like libertarian, and if I had it my way, I would just let people, like, the holidays wouldn't be incorporated like under the state. So you could take time off, but again, it's depending on your workplace and how you've arranged it with your workplace, like not the state.
So do you think that it should be differently, I guess, managed in a sense? Maybe it shouldn't be a
Yes.
public holiday, but if you have a holiday, there should be less exemption or less
Yeah.
work in getting it off?
Yes. All I say, if it is public, is just incorporate all, like, I want to see Hanukkah exemplified. I want to see, Muslims have their, like, so I want it all shown.
One thing I will just that just came to me. So where I grew up in Don Mills is a very multicultural place, especially the schools in the area. And just down the street is Mark Garneau, and they're actually the only school in Toronto that gives every student Eid off because there's such a high population of Muslim students that it makes more sense for them to give them that time off than to make all these kids, get religious exemption. So
Interesting.
I just thought I would point that out. I just remembered that.
But it's because it all comes down to the majority, right? Like, let's take as an example Egypt. Egypt in the past was a country that was a Christian majority, Christian Coptic Christians. And what happened with Egypt? With Egypt, the demographic started changing, and then it becomes a majority of Muslim countries, of a Muslim country. What is happening with Egypt right now? Obviously, you're going to see more people celebrating at this point the Muslim, the Muslim holidays than the Christians, And the same happened with this school. Like, when you have such a demographic that change, you do what is practical for the majority.
And it's interesting you bring that up back to you, Christina, because York University used to be closed on Jewish holidays because it had such a large Jewish presence, which now brings us to the most exciting portion of our discussion, which is Catholic schools. Now, the question that we asked our audience this week was, do you support publicly funded Catholic schools? And Christina, what are the results?
So 25 people, so 48% said yes, and 27 people said no, 52%.
So very close. Like,
Yeah.
less people said they support publicly funded Catholic schools but by 2 people. Very small margin.
I would say it's pretty 50-50.
Interesting. Now, we get the answers from the ladies in the room. Christina, do you support?
Catholic schools should not be funded.
Okay, Anna
Catholic schools should remain funded.
and Tonya.
Catholic schools should not be publicly funded.
Wow. Well, look at how concise their answers are. They're so well prepared. I love these people. So let's get into why. But first, I do want to bring up a very interesting fact. Is the Toronto Catholic District School Board? Actually, two interesting facts. Ontario is the only province in Canada that still has public Catholic district school boards, and specifically in Toronto, the TDSB has 91,000 students, and it is not only one of the largest school boards in Canada, it is the largest publicly funded Catholic school board in the world. So just wrap your head around that. 91,000 students are in the Toronto Catholic District School Board. Your Catholic District School Board has 51,000. So just in the GTA alone, that's at least 140,000 kids. The TCDSB governs 197 schools in the Toronto area that make up 164 elementary, 28 secondary, 3 schools that combine both, and 2 alternative schools. Now, I'm a little iffy on what they mean by alternative schools. But
So I remember in high school, I knew a couple people who ended up going to alternative schools, and basically it's like a learn at your own pace type of thing.
Okay.
You can take a lesser course load. I think your hours are kind of flexible. I don't know, Tonya, if you know more about it.
So I went to an elementary school that was technically, it had the label alternative in it. But in my experience, nothing about it was vastly different from the normal school setting, apart from having handicapped children, like the handicap wing, if you will call it, or the disabled wing. And I thought that was a great experience because every week it was basically mandatory for myself, and I hate using the word normal, but like able-bodied students. So a couple of them would pair up and just like play with the kids and just
kind of
have them learn, and
kind of like the Best Buddies program that a lot of people had in schools.
Yeah,
so
like that was the only alternative part about it. Basically, it was a big school. So
with all that being said, and crunching the numbers, why do you all have your specific points of view? Tonya and Christina, you say no. Anna, you say yes, because you're the minority right now. I mean, nobody knows what I think, which is great. Anna, we're going to start with you. Why do you think that there should still be a public district school board?
Well, one of the reasons is the one you mentioned right now, like it is a large percentage of students over there. And also a lot of those, in my own perspective, like the reason why you have such a large number of students, and particularly in Toronto, is because a lot of those students are actually sons of immigrants. Many immigrants that move to Canada, and I have seen that with my own family, the one that have reproduced here, they select Catholic schools because they offer good quality of education. Many of these immigrants come from also countries like Philippines, Latin America, Eastern Europe, that a lot of these countries are also Christians or Catholic, and they see in these Catholic schools a possibility for their kids to have nice education without paying a crazy amount of money that you will pay for a regular private schools. And in the end of the day, when you see the percentage, for example, I was reading about Catholic education in the US, minorities actually have a less percentage of dropping out when they attend Catholic schools.
Interesting. I didn't, but following up on that, two questions. Number one, why should Catholic schools be publicly available, but other religious schools be private? And we'll start with that.
Well, one of the reasons why the Catholic schools are publicly funded in Canada, it was pretty much because in the formation of this country, that was like a condition. Like that came mostly from Quebec and mostly from many Irish immigrants that were here, and they felt threatened that the only schools available for their kids was pretty much Protestant schools, because back then there was no secular schools. So they saw this as an alternative. The reason why this is still available nowadays, well, Canada has been a country with a Christian heritage. They kept the Catholic education. They also probably perceive that they are offering good quality. And also, well, no politician wants to carry the political burden of challenging that.
Well, you mentioned political burdens, and that's something that we're going to discuss. Our current mayor, John Tory, once ran for premier. He once ran for Doug Ford's current job. And one of his campaign promises was that he would reevaluate funding to religious institutions. So not only to Catholic schools, but to Jewish and specifically Muslim institutions. And a lot of people say that that's what cost him the election.
Of course.
Yeah, that's a jump.
Ask anybody, and I'm just going to say it. It's mostly conservatives who are, they are in support of Catholic or publicly funded Catholic schools, but God forbid you ask them to then allow their taxes to go towards Islamic schools or Jewish schools or Buddhist schools. I can tell you right now, not a single one of them wants to pay for that. They can say that it's because Catholicism is the dominant religion. But if we're talking about being a country that is inclusive and equal, then we have to fund all religious schools. And I don't think anybody wants that. I don't think we already pay so many taxes. Imagine throwing however many more school boards into there.
I do think a lot of parents decide to send their children to Catholic schools based off of the idea that they interpret it as a better education system, because I know that a lot of students who go to Catholic schools just aren't Catholic. So that's another thing to... That's
an excellent point you bring up, because what's interesting, though, is secondary schools in the Catholic school system, they are not allowed to discriminate on who goes to the school, but elementary schools have a choice to say that Catholics only and other religions are not allowed. Mm-hmm. So how do you respond to that, the fact that this is a publicly funded institution and they're dictating who gets to go there?
A huge problem. Like it's the same as saying that it's the same as if a public school is asking a kid to be a certain way, and if they aren't, then they can't come to the school. That's not fair. Education is a right, and and religion is a right, but it is a choice that you make, and it is something that you yourself, your family, whatever it is, practice. It is not anybody else's responsibility.
Exactly. I don't like. Oh, sorry. I just don't like combining religion with like an education, schooling of children. I don't like
that as well. Yeah.
I think that discriminating is not bad. Sorry, discriminating is bad. Sorry. All the opposite. Discriminating is bad, but I also think that if there are Catholic schools, you already expect them to be different when it comes to religion because they're Catholic schools. Like, if you send your kid to a Catholic school, it's obviously that they're going to receive certain Catholic values in exchange.
But the question is, why are they allowed to discriminate? Let alone, if someone's not Catholic and they want to send their child to a Catholic school, why shouldn't they be allowed?
I don't know. Ask that question to the government, why they allow that. Because
the government should stay out of people's business.
Well, if anyone can go to a public school that is being publicly funded, then anybody should be allowed to go to a Catholic school that's being publicly funded.
I agree with that.
And I have friends who went to Catholic high school and they were not Catholic.
Exactly.
And some of them, I even knew one friend who actually students had to be baptized, and she had to get baptized before she could be accepted into this school, and the only reason she was going was because it was the better of two high schools in her community. It wasn't because she wanted Catholic values, it was because it was the better option for her education.
Exactly. And what is that telling like mass population and children in general, families who are thinking about sending their children to school, that religious schools are the better system? Like, that's terrible, in my opinion.
That goes kind of against the idea of secularism and keeping church and state separate, right?
Well, no, I mean, yes and no. Like, keeping it separate is how.
You're blanking?
Yeah, I just don't. Yeah.
I don't think that any country is really secular, because in order to make a country really secular, you will basically need to brainwash the entire population and get it from the scratch. Like, let's be honest. If Canada gives certain preferences to Christian values, it's because of the way this country was funded. If a Muslim gives the same, if Iran gives preferences to Muslim values, it's because of that. And the same with Israel. Like, every nation is going to be like that.
So how do you then believe, going back to church and state separation, if you support having Catholic schools, how do you support having church and state separate?
Because in the case of Catholic schools, what other alternative do you have? Let's say that we cancel the
Exactly.
no, the public school system is like, if people are selecting Catholic schools, it's because they don't want the public school as an option. Like,
They don't want public school as an option because they think that religious schools will teach their children,
but
but that's not true.
No, but why then? Like, how do you change the mindset of the person, you know?
Well, I don't think we live in a country where we have terrible public schools.
Exactly.
That could be an issue in the States, but we have exceptional public schools. The high school that I went to had a 98% rate of university and college like kids who went on to university.
But it depends on the area too.
It depends on the area, but what I'm saying is that, so anywhere you go, any sort of service, whether it be healthcare, schooling, whatever it is, in the areas where they're in rougher neighborhoods, where they're poorer, where the infrastructure is worse, they are going to inevitably be poorer services. And that's something that I think that's a separate issue. What I'm saying is public school as a whole in this country is, many of them are exceptional schools. And I don't have a single friend who didn't go on to post-secondary from my high school because it was, it was a great school. The kids were well educated and they all succeeded in university and college too.
Well, but we have those numbers that you mentioned before. What are the numbers of the Catholic board schools in Toronto? They were huge. If you just scrap that service, all these people are going to be resorting as something that they don't want. This is unfair because these people are also taxpayers. Now, from my libertarian point of view, I would also say, you know what? Let's cancel all public education. Period.
Well,
let's cancel public education and let's give vouchers to people, and that people select what school their kids are going to attend according to vouchers, like they do in Sweden. That's what I would support. Is everyone going to support that? Probably not.
See, in Sweden it can work because the cultural demographic is so singular, right? But not here.
How does it work in Sweden, just for our viewers to understand?
Well, so from what I've learned, places like Sweden, Norway, Nordic Europe, basically they have the cultural, they're mostly Christian, basically. They're mostly just the same race, and therefore they can just agree on things more collectively to make a decision that reflects all of them.
But the voucher system also allows different schools to compete. In this case, in the case of Canada, you could have easily Muslim schools, Jewish schools, Catholic schools, and just give vouchers to families and tell, you know what, this is the public money. Spend it in the school that you consider more appropriate to your kid.
I think that we can hypothesize that, but I think we also have to focus on the reality of what we have. That's not something that's not something in the foreseeable future we have access to. And I think that by your taxes having to go to Catholic schools and you're not Catholic, or your child doesn't go to a Catholic school, but you're still forced to fund that. It would be like asking somebody to fund some other religious organization or
So Marshall actually said, where is he saying? Sweden is actually about as diverse as Canada. So I disagree with that, but also the population, I was going to say, is a lot. It's not as big as Canada, so can make a lot of decisions that way.
I do think that in the end, there are so many policies that you disagree with, so many initiatives, so many services, and still we're funding them. Like for me, I will just scrap the TTC and make it all private.
They need 100%. The TTC needs top to bottom rework. But that's not the topic. But still,
can you imagine the Toronto Catholic Commission, like the Toronto Transit Catholic Commission?
Only Catholics can take it.
Yeah.
Oh, also, we forgot about French immersion schools.
And I was going to bring that up because there are different options of public schools. Like I went to a French immersion school. Je peux parler français.
That's great. That's awesome. And like I say, that could be an option too. Like in my country, we have German schools and they all talked in German. So, it is like...
and then you also have French Catholic schools,
Right.
which is a whole, there's a whole
Universe.
Yeah.
There's so many
Multiverse.
options though at different public schools. Like I went to 2 high schools, and my first high school they had a cyber arts program. They're the only place in Toronto that had this, like, or Ontario, no, Toronto, that had this specialized visual arts component to the education. And it wasn't an extra cost. You had to apply to get in, but it was an option for students to go to public school but have the option to take certain subjects that the other kids weren't taking because they wanted to specialize in whatever. That was the same case with the second high school I went to. There was an optional French immersion. And there's a lot of schools with those, right? Gifted programs. Not all schools have gifted programs. So if you're opposed to the general idea of the public school education, find a school where there's alternatives. If you like,
But people like Anna would say that a Catholic school is an alternative.
it's an alternative, but like you can practice. This is the other thing. I went to 2 very multicultural schools where I had friends and students who would leave regularly to pray or to observe whatever it was that they, had to do. And there was no discrimination. There was no penalization. You have the right to practice. If there's a certain time of day that you want to pray, you shouldn't be told no.
That comes down to another question I had, which was, should prayer be allowed in school? Because
you can't discriminate. It's the same way. And
do Catholic schools have a right to discriminate? Like if you go to a Catholic school
and you say, I don't want to pray?
well, either you say you don't want to pray, or somebody Jewish or Muslim says, I need to go pray in my own religion.
Well, I would say that they should be allowed to, but the Catholic school and Catholic people will tell you no, because that's not the point of a Catholic school. But there should be you shouldn't get in trouble for needing to pray. And it's maybe an extreme comparison, but if a girl in high school needs to leave because she's got to deal with something, she's got to run to the bathroom, we can't tell her, no, sorry, you're gonna have to sit there and deal with it. So obviously that's extreme. That's a biological humanly function. But in terms of rights, I don't think that it's fair to say, no, this is a part of your life. To you, it's a necessity, but we're not going to allow you to do that. I don't think that's fair. I think students should be allowed to pray, but that doesn't mean that you should not force kids to pray, and you cannot hinder them from praying.
I think one of the alternatives, and this is something that I saw I was studying about Italy, is that Italians have they have the option to fund the Vatican State. Like, it's not mandatory. You can pretty much there is a percentage, I think it's something like 8% something, that they can choose if they want that percentage of taxes to go to the Vatican or to go to other social causes. So that's something that I will consider in this situation.
Now, we are at the end of our discussion, and the last thing I'm going to ask is, do you see Canada specifically becoming more or less secular and more or less separation between church and state? Tonya?
I'm going to say more.
You think more? Why?
I think more because the divide is so prominent. Like, even in the States, it's reflecting onto here. So for as long as there's this partisan divide from like left and right, I think secularism will just like continue on.
Same. I think secularism is going to be the path that Canada will follow, but it will also, it might change according to, the religious majority that Canada starts taking.
I think I agree. We're going to be secular for a while, and that's also just an inevitable part of our history. And these things are hard to completely stray away from. I don't see it changing anytime soon. I hope for it, but I think we'll be secular for a while.
You hope for it? You hope for more secularism?
No, Elliot, no. I hope for more separation, but I'm saying that I think that's going to be hard to achieve in the near future.
Interesting. Well, that's where we're going to leave it for today. That was our show for this week. Thank you to everybody that tuned in and that messaged us live. Tonya, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me back.
We love having you. We love having guests and differing opinions. Christina and Anna, as always, it has been a pleasure to have you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Elliot.
Thank you, Elliot.
And again, that was our show for this week. Thanks to everybody that tuned in, messaged us live. A brand new episode of The Raben Report will be coming to you next week, same day, same time, almost the same people. Have a great day, everyone.